Good morning, good morning, good morning. How the devil are you doing this fine day? Good morning to Kennedy's Timber, to Houston by Houston, Andre Evgenovich as well. Good morning to all of you. Good morning to Dan Cullen over on our usual channels. Where is Dan? I spotted him here a moment ago. There we are. He says, good morning, guys. He's down in lovely Devizes. He's down in Wiltshire as well. He also gives us an update. He's starting on all these GPS type things at the moment. He says this GPS stuff is interesting once you get into it. Yeah, I bet it is. But it is a lot to learn. But you know, like operating an excavator, really, I would imagine the day will come when it will be second nature to you. Speaking of learning, I spent yesterday at the National Construction College up at Bircham Newton, not a million miles away from Sandringham. Didn't bump into any royals, although I was with our Construction Industry Training Board royalty, Claire Hill and Will Stoyles. Yeah, I'd forgotten. I'd really forgotten. Yeah, I reckon it's probably 10, maybe even 12 years since I was last up at the National Construction College, and boy, oh boy, has it ever changed. Still knew my way around. You know, everything was where it belonged. You know, the plant hangar was in the same place as it always was, and everything else. But the accommodation has been hugely upgraded. We actually went into one of the bedrooms that's been set aside for one of the students or the learners, as the NCC call them. Every bit as good as a travel lodge. Absolutely fantastic. The facilities they've got there, they've got games rooms and golf simulators and game simulators, quiet areas. They've got coffee shops, and I used to go to the canteen for. I said to one of the people at NCC yesterday, I always seem to take my trips up to Bircham Newton in the winter. And if anyone knows Bircham Newton, it's as flat as anything, and it's always windy. And it comes sort of November, December, January, February, the wind comes in horizontally. You can literally lean into it. It's freezing cold. So we used to go to the canteen for big sort of pies and puddings and apple crumble and stuff like that to, you know, keep the heat in. It's all changed. Oh, there's healthy stuff. There's no more Coca-Cola. It's all juices and water. They've got a sandwich bar. They've got a fully equipped shop. It is remarkable, the facility, and some of the stuff they're doing up there. Really, really impressive. We have filmed a video which is related to their new demolition operative apprenticeship scheme, which is they've already had one tranche through, but the next tranche is going through in November. So they're looking for people to attend that. And it really is an astonishing place. In the nicest possible way, it's in the middle of nowhere, which I think for a visit makes it inconvenient. It took me 4 hours to get there. It took me nearly 5 hours to get back. But what I would say is that works in its favor, because a lot of the young people, the learners that are going there, for many of them, it's their first time away from home, but they're kept not against their will. That would be wrong. But they have everything they could possibly need on that campus. There's washing machines and there's TV rooms. They've got TVs in their own rooms as well. They've got games console hookups and stuff like that. So despite the fact that they're potentially away from home for the first time ever, they're very, very well looked after, very well catered for. And even the actual training facilities, we used to do a lot of the our work up there, demonstrations and launches and that kind of thing, by the plant hangar. And the plant hangar faces out onto this huge field. It stretches, I don't know, half a mile into the distance, and there's dump trucks and there's cranes and there's excavators and dumpers and mini excavators and all this kind of stuff. But the plant hangar itself was literally what it was. It was a hangar. Obviously, this was an old RAF base, and it was a hangar, and it was very, very cold, very desolate, bit smelly, not great. Oh my lord, you see it now. All the floors been painted. They've got little booths and setups. They've got classrooms in there, very well equipped classrooms with big widescreen interactive TVs, and it really is fantastic. So NCC, I said to one of the people there yesterday, and I felt slightly bad saying it. I have a certain opinion, and I think a lot of people have the same opinion about the Construction Industry Training Board. You know, we're always questioning whether it's fit for purpose, and you might say that about the upper echelons and the hierarchy and those that, you know, the ivory tower. but down on the ground, the people that are actually delivering the training, it's as good as it gets. It really is. Chris Ford says, morning, Big Dippers. What's on your bucket list? I could do with a doze, actually. It was a long, long journey yesterday. Let's have a look. Dan saying, hopefully GPS gets easier. Good morning and welcome back. Thank you very much indeed, Gary. Obviously I missed all of you, but it was a worthwhile journey. Kind of a happy return. As I say, I used to spend quite a lot of time up at Bircham Newton. We used to take dealer groups up there. We've done demonstrations up there with Caterpillar, with Bobcat, with Kubota. And I remember every single time I used to come away thinking, what a fantastic, it's a jewel in the crown. There is a similar facility over in the Netherlands, the Soma College, which is very good. But Bircham Newton is about 10 times that size. It's enormous. And it is so well run, everything about it. And I even forgave them. When I arrived, I arrived maybe 5 minutes late. You have to get a badge at the check-in. And to get your badge, you have to stand and watch a 3-minute induction. Go here, don't go there, don't do this, don't do that. And I was stood there thinking, oh, God, it's gone very, very woke. Wrong word, but, it's gone very, very officious. And once you get in there, it's absolutely fantastic. I honestly couldn't recommend it. If you get a chance to go to Bircham Newton, I strongly recommend that you do. Ken Hatcher saying, good morning. He's got the sunshine back, as have we. Just hope to get more of it to get into it. Yeah, indeed. Well, keep practicing that. Is the college open to anyone? I'm looking to get my son into plant and was looking for advice on how to get him started. Well, good question. And yes and no. Yes and no. Cut a long story short is, yes, it is open to anyone. But how you get in there are two different routes. There is what they refer to as the commercial. In other words, if you're a self-employed person, for example, you can pay to go and sit a course there. Excavator, telehandler, dozer, whatever it might. You can do all of those. That's perfectly possible. And they've got simulators that kind of ease you in. Lots of simulators as well. They've got all of that. But the demolition operative apprentice, and I'm not suggesting that your son is after this one, Gary, but this is kind of the lion's share, I think, of the courses they run there, is that they basically wait for companies, levy-paying companies, to book spaces to bring people on board. In other words, Fred Blogg's Demolition is decided to take on an apprentice where they send him away, him or her away. There's 18 weeks of classroom-based training spread over 24 months. And in between times, they carry around an app on their phone where they are updating their portfolio of what they've done, what they've achieved, what they've learned and everything else. And also there's a lot of on-the-job learning, but ultimately the company and the levy is paying for that. So if your son has a friendly employer or somebody that's willing to do that, the cost is fairly negligible, I think. Then that's one way in there. The other way is, I guess, Gary, you as dad have to put your hand in your pocket and come up with the goods. But interestingly, what we were talking yesterday, the operative course that they're doing, or the operative apprentice course they're doing at the moment, or they'll be doing in November, is also replicated at a college in London. But that's very classroom based, whereas there's a lot of more practical. There's a lot more stuff to be done up there. So I would recommend that one over the London one. But also, obviously, because it's further north, they do tend to attract quite a few people from the north. In fact, one of the plant groups that was there yesterday were from Scotland. So it is very Scottish friendly. Not that you need it to be Scottish friendly, but you get the idea. Chris, you don't want to know mine. 7 wife's lottery wins, 7 houses in 7 areas around the world. I've already had, I've put in my order. I don't really do the lottery, but Fred does from time to time. And I've already said, if he wins, I'd like a house. I don't particularly care about how big the house is, but I would like out the back of it a paddock where I can breed boxer dogs. And I say breed, I'm not talking about breeding and then selling them. I'm talking about breeding them and then just hanging out with them. I'm thinking maybe 20. Well, waking up to breakfast with 20 boxer dogs is my idea of bliss. We had a few Army plane flybys yesterday. We had none. RAF Bertram Newton was devoid of all activity in the air. Morning, Gary. How's the Shetlands? Chris Ford, when I was at that age, I was interested in, apart from diggers, was bints and beer. Well, again, I'm not going to suggest that they are called bints. So I'll leave that entirely to you, Chris. But I did ask the question yesterday, of your intake these days, what is the gender split? And they reckon that about 30% of the intake going through Bertram Newton now is female, and it's skewed even more over on the crane courses, because the ladies love a crane, apparently. And obviously, we've featured Katie Keller on this show, Katie Cranes, although she's not actually operating a crane anymore. But there's lots of ladies out there operating cranes. Why are there so few still operating excavators and dozers? But yeah, there you are. Gary says it's dull and overcast, but it's precious relief after all the sunshine, I would have thought. Mark Whiting is here, which does give us permission to actually make a start. How long was the journey there? Well, therein lies an issue. You ever had one of those journeys where you think, is there anything else that can go wrong? I checked it on the sat nav, and door to door, it was supposed to be 3 hours and 20 minutes. So being the anorak that I am, I allowed 4 hours and 20 minutes. It took 4.5 hours. Halfway around the M25, on my way up the M11, part of the M25 was closed. So we had to veer off and then make our way back onto Dartford. But when we got to the Dartford crossing, or the Dartford tunnel, there was a traffic jam there, so we got held up there. There was an accident, not on our side, not on our carriageway, on the opposite carriageway, but you know how the rubberneckers all have to stop and have a look. So there was an accident on the M11, that slowed us down again. And then when we actually got off the motorways and we started meandering across Norfolk, there was a tiny, tiny sprinkling of rain. But it was like we'd all forgotten. And I realise it's been a while since we've seen rain and operated windscreen wipers. But everybody slowed to a snail's pace. And I'm sat there thinking, I'm due here at 10. And I got to 10. Thankfully, I'd emailed them. Got to 10:05, got to 10:10, and we pulled up at the door. So, yeah, it's not local, but it's very, very good. Let's have a look. Dan says, Gary, I think it's best to get in groundwork firms and start girls and watch and learn how the ground is. Watch machines, work, ask questions, and get into a local quarry. It's all possible, I guess. Do you have a link to it, please? I will do that in just a second. Stefan Edwards is here. Just very quickly, a quick update on this. Stefan, actually, you may remember, mentioned a few days ago that there's a Dutch demolition company who are about to take delivery, not too distant future, of a couple of new Sani excavators, including an electric high reach. And I thought, quite fancy a look at that. So I reached out to Sani Marketing in Europe, or Sani Europe's marketing department, and they came back with a very curt, we don't do Benelux, you'll have to speak to them. Not, here's their telephone number or here's their email address. It was just like, it's not our problem. So I've now got to find somebody at Sani Benelux to take that forward. Dan Carl's saying there's 3 army camps around here. Well, at least you should be safe. 20 boxer dogs is a lot of shit to pick up every day. I was thinking, if Fred wins the lottery, there must be, these robot hoovers that you get, or robot lawnmowers. There must be a turd collector. And if there's not, I'll invent one, surely. Maybe. Crossing the Thames at Dartford is always a nightmare, no matter the time nor the direction. No, absolutely. The one thing I would say in its favour, and I have my own personal feelings about the fact that we're still paying for the Dartford Bridge 30 plus years after it was built. But what I would say about it is they've taken away the toll booths. It's the first time I've been through there for a while. I may have driven it through it like that before. I don't remember, but I do remember yesterday. No toll booths through the tunnel, no toll booths coming back over the bridge, which does ease the flow. It does ease the flow. Not at the time I was going through it in the morning. And I have to say, when you come through the tunnel or when you come over the bridge, There's, I don't know, there used to be maybe a dozen toll booths, so it's quite wide, but then it goes down into 4 and then 3 lanes. So there's a bit of chaos there, but it works much better. Speaking of Stefan, his colleague Gilles Blanc is here as well. Good morning. Good contingent from the Netherlands today. The joys of driving in the UK. You forget, don't you? You do forget. I think that's one of the reasons I've kind of retired to this room and drive as little as I possibly can. I'm fine driving around, local streets and stuff like that, but you get on motorways and the number of near misses we saw yesterday. And funnily enough, coming out of the Dartford area, there were 2 cars, one in the outer lane, one in the inside lane, and both of them at the same time decided, I know, we'll go into the middle lane. And they got within a hair's breadth of colliding right in front of me, which was fantastic. Thankfully, they both saw the error of their ways and avoided it. But yeah, I do want to bring one thing to your attention. I can't actually put it on the screen because of the way it's come through, but I do want to tell you a thing. I've had a bulletin this morning from the Health and Safety Executive. I realise I'm probably looking at this wrong, and I know I'm pedantic, and I know I analyse words and the way that they're presented may be different to everybody else. But you know that thing you do with people where you say, do you want the good news or you want the bad news? That's how the HSE have delivered this news. The industry-wide figures include 25 fatal injuries to workers in the construction industry, a decrease of 10 from the previous year. Well, good news. The 25 that died, obviously fucking terrible news, but 10 down on the previous year. And then kind of the bad news begins to creep back in. Despite the fact that the number was down 10, the fatal number was down 10 this year, the 5-year average is still 37. The biggest killers are still falls from height, being struck by a moving vehicle or being struck by a moving object. And then tucked away down the bottom of this bulletin is the news that 2,146 people died from asbestos-related diseases, mesothelioma, in 2024, which is lower than the average of 2,508 deaths during the period 2011 to 2020. That's the average. So they're playing up the decrease and setting against the averages. But 2,146 people dying from asbestos-related diseases is not news that you tuck down the bottom. That's news that belongs up front. And at least it's there, I guess, because the other thing that isn't there, and it is something we're going to be talking about at the end of the show, there is no mention, yet again, of suicide. And you can argue till you're blue in the face about whether a construction suicide is a construction problem or a personal problem. But when some of the suicides take place on sites, you kind of have to think there's probably a connection there, and they're not even being recorded. We're going to talk about that a bit later on. But yeah, that's the latest from the HSE. 25 deaths from regular type accidents. And I'm saying regular, knowing full well what that means, because they are regular. That's what is that? It's one a fortnight is the number of people that are being killed in the industry. So one a fortnight. It's not really cause to celebrate. But also more than 2,100 people dying from mesothelioma in the same period. Definitely no reason to celebrate there. Let's crack on, shall we? I've already been talking for 20 minutes and I've done absolutely nothing. So let me roll the intro, get the show on the road. It is Wednesday, the 22nd of July. Welcome to the Breakfast Show. I am your host, Mark Anthony, the Walrus of Demolition, the Lord High Chancellor of live streaming, the authentic voice of the global demolition industry. And in today's show, is this the sexiest little loader you've ever seen? I think it might be. Show that to you in a second. The next generation Cat 6060 goes to work. That's an impressive machine as well. Wacker Neuson dazzles in demolition, and Delta Demolition down under. That was all about the alliteration this morning. And today's episode of Mark's Morning Monologue is called, quite simply, Two Widows. Two Widows. It's a work of fiction, based entirely on fact. It's a work of fiction. So I hope you can stick around for that. What have we got in the chat? Jim Turner has just arrived at 10:21. Not that I'm keeping count, but good morning, Jim. Just so you know, you can pass that parcel. I'm home this weekend. Thanks, Dan. It's actually under my desk. I will tape it up momentarily, and I'll get that off to you. No problem at all. Right, let's crack on. Let's have a bit of Caterpillar, and then I'm going to show you this sexy little loader. Dan saying, where is the GPS training held? I don't know the answer to that. I mean, I'm assuming that National Construction College have turned on to all things GPS related. I didn't see it, and I didn't ask. Probably my problem there. But I would imagine there's a fair bit of GPS training available around the country. Is the death count from mesothelioma all deaths or just construction related? That's a good question. Hang on a minute. Let me call up that message and I'll see if I can find out. No, according to this, it is 2,146 people died from the disease in 2024, but it's not specifically related to construction. The other parts of the announcement are that bit apparently is not specific to construction, although construction and demolition, I would imagine, contribute a fair number of those. Dan saying, looking to get training and steel wrist train too. Fairly sure we spotted some couplers up there. Also, interestingly, I was talking to one of the guys up there about simulators and the role that they play, and they actually put one of their own people through a test. I think it was an ADT test, but they trained them only on a simulator to see if that person was able to pass the test based purely on a simulator, and they were. They're not recommending it, but they wanted to see just how realistic the simulators really were in a real world scenario. The other point as well, I was, we were strolling up the stairs at the time, going to the facility where they keep all of their simulators, and I was talking about the fact that CM Labs, our friends over in Canada, have now got a demolition simulator. And I said, "Oh, that's very interesting. What was the name of the company?" I said, "CM Labs," and they said, "Oh, they actually provide our crane simulators." So yeah, the Canadians are here. I can see a change of firm on the horizon. Been running around like blue arse flies this morning because those in management are disorganized fuckers. Well, to anyone else at this point, I would say, Jim, don't burn your bridges. Make sure you've got somewhere else to go before you do anything hasty. But this is Jim, and Jim will do what Jim will do. But yeah, look, you know what I'm saying. Right, I've promised you a sexy loader, and by God, you're going to get a sexy loader. It's only 53 seconds long, but I have to say this, I know we don't do much in the way of small wheel loaders in this country, but if we did, this might be the machine of choice. Have a look.
Meet the Norcar A7750 Power Plus, the mini loader loaded with power. This model has been updated with a reinforced extension boom that provides 20% more lifting power enabling it to lift up to 1,800 kilograms with ease. Despite its impressive power, the Norcar A7750 Power Plus remains agile, stable, and easy to maneuver. And this is just the beginning.
Pretty smart, right? It's Finnish. Before anyone asks, they're from Finland. Norcar is from Finland. So I would guess, when I saw that, obviously the colour is very different, but when I saw that, I immediately thought of Avant Techno, who are also Finnish. So yeah, maybe there's, I don't know if there's any relation between the two, but that's the Norcar. You can find it near Helsinki, probably. Back after this.
If you are enjoying this episode, please consider supporting the show. You can leave us a tip at buymeacoffee.com/demolition news.
Yeah, Caterpillar have a new next generation version of their massive 6060 face shovel and mining shovel, basically. And this is what it looks like. Jim, reassuring this is, he says, don't worry, I have other seats with my name already on them, just a phone call away. Chris, on the same subject, chaos reigned and we all got flexible planning is the way forward. Just watch some bastard piss on your chips. Speaking of chips, which we kind of weren't. Left Bertram Newton yesterday, and because we'd had the early start, didn't have breakfast, and decided to go and have a bit of lunch. Now, you're obviously very close to King's Lynn, right on the coast, and I thought, well, by the coast, fish and chips. Now, I've not eaten meat or fish in about, I don't know, 10 weeks or so, thereabouts. I've been very, very, well, plant-based, basically. Lots of salads, particularly during the recent hot weather, but went for fish and chips at a place called Eric's. Good Lord. Good Lord. You forget how good a chip shop chip is when you don't have them for a while. Absolutely fantastic. I can't remember the name of the town that Eric's is in. It's up near Bertram Newton. If ever you're in that part of the world, I would strongly recommend Eric's. I'm going to say good morning to Northeast Demo as well, who have just joined us over on Instagram. You've joined us just in time because we've got a bit of demolition, two bits of demolition coming up as well. Dan is going back to work, but he's listening in, although he's forgotten his headphones. That being said, he said, whoa, what a beast. What is the biggest excavator mining shovel in the world? Who has the title? I think, is it Komatsu? I tell you what, let me get the next film going and I'll go and have a look. We need a bit of this first.
Since the finance bill came into effect in April, the construction industry has seen a surge of fuel thefts. The rising cost of living has placed an additional risk of theft by employees and contractors, as well as opportunistic thieves. By using diesel dye and placing warnings of its use, you are sending a clear message that this is your fuel.
Yeah, it took some figuring out because the Google Gemini said the biggest mining machine in the world is the Bagger 293, but that's a bucket wheeled excavator. There are bigger electric rope shovels, but the biggest hydraulic mining excavator is actually the Cat 6060's bigger brother, the Cat 6090 FS, operating weight of approximately 1,000 tons and a 52 cubic meter bucket. Apparently, that's according to Google. If anybody knows any different, I'd love to hear from you. Yeah, I'm reading through, but that looks to be the case. If anybody knows better than Google, which happens quite a lot, I'd love to hear from you. Should have taken the rods up. Great stretch of water at King's Lynn. Yeah, well, I do course fishing as opposed to sea fishing. Obviously, there's coastal fishing, but I know up in the fens there, lots and lots of pike. Not really my kind of fishing, but we did pass some very nice looking rivers and streams. Yeah, I didn't have time, but I wish we had. And I did. I'm sure I've mentioned this before. I actually bought myself a little telescopic rod, a pen rod, folds down to about that big with a reel on it. I used to carry it in the glove compartment of my car. The problem is, in my head, it was a good idea. You know, if I spot a bit of water and I've got a few hours to kill, I'll just go and have a fish. You need bait and permission and quite possibly a local license. It's not as straightforward as I'd believed. So yeah, that's never worked. But you're absolutely right. There is some lovely water up there. Right. Let's talk. Let's talk demolition with Wacker Neuson.
We are a medium-sized demolition company. We were founded in 1963 by my grandfather, Bernhard Maas. Here, we are currently carrying out the demolition of the Vallourec Industrial Hall. We are taking down the buildings, processing the material on site, and then reusing it. Wacker Neuson wheel loaders support us in our daily work. When deliveries of materials, pallets, and so on arrive, we can unload them. We can move materials back and forth with the buckets. We can also sweep and clean the roads. They are in use here every single day, and we really would not want to be without them.
The wheel loader was developed specifically for the construction industry. Before development started, we spoke with many customers and asked them what a new Wacker Neuson wheel loader absolutely had to deliver. One key point is that the machine has very strong lifting force. It can lift up to 4 tons. Even at low engine speeds, it already delivers high pushing force. That means the machine runs quietly on the job site overall. With a cab height of 2.51 meters, a compact rear end, and a clear view of the front carriage, all the key requirements for daily job site use have been implemented here.
I also find the machines very easy to maintain. Everything the operators need to check or see is clearly visible. When you open the engine hood at the back, everything is very easy to access, and the overall design is well thought out.
We have now positioned the control unit for the front low carriage in the front frame instead of underneath the cab. As a result, far fewer hoses have to be routed through the articulation joint. We have also installed the engine transversely at the rear. That means I can access the diesel engine from the back without having to tilt the cab.
It is definitely very comfortable. The steps are safe and wide enough. You have excellent visibility thanks to the large windows. We also have the roof window, so you can see the bucket even when working up high. And because of how the front cylinder is positioned, you can still see the fork tines at the front as well.
The key topic here is visibility. We have fundamentally changed the front carriage, which means we now have only one lift cylinder. That makes the machine really safe and efficient on the job site, exactly what the customer needs.
Our machine fleet needed a few new units again, so we decided to go with 10 Wacker Neuson wheel loaders.
Have I been pronouncing it wrong all these years? I bet I have. Wacker Neuson. They're German and Austrian. Wacker makes more sense. Been calling them Wacker for I don't even know how long. Wacker Neuson. I bet I don't get into that habit. Nigel finds some nice chip shops. He does. I actually think he should do a separate channel. Nigel Eats or something like that. I do enjoy watching. And doesn't he eat a lot? I had a medium haddock and chips yesterday. Ate all the fish like the good boy that I am. Didn't even put a dent in the chips. I'm out of practice. I'm I don't know, stone and a half down or so. I'm a shadow of the man I used to be. But yeah, it arrived. It's oh, look at these chips. That looks fantastic. Half a dozen chips. It's like I better concentrate on the fish because I'm not going to get through this otherwise. Dan saying I'm also plant-based. Yeah, listen, I'm enjoying it. I'm thoroughly enjoying it. And I'm back on it today. yesterday was a minor wobble, purely out of convenience and a little bit of greed, but I'm back on it today. I'm feeling fighting fit, and I intend to do it while we're on our cruise as well, where we have access to some fantastic food, but we can pick and choose. I can eat salad to the cows come home. We got one final film for you. It's a bit more demolition. It's from Down Under. I'll be back after this. Right, as I say, we've got one final film before we go over into today's morning monologue. Just a quick note on the morning monologue. It was inspired by a guy called Matthew Besser. He commented on my article about Where's Our Jeremy Clarkson. We had a bit of a back and forth on via email. And he said a few things that just inspired today's morning monologue. So Matthew, if you're watching, thank you very much. I have already dropped him a line to say the article's coming, but he is the inspiration behind it. Anyway, let's do a bit of demolition before we get into that. Here we go, heading from Melbourne, Down Under. Yeah, I agree, Dan. That was one hell of a tune. Mick Norton's just arrived as well. Good morning, all from Wakefield. Good morning, Mick. Dan saying, good thing about plant-based, you can't get food poisoning from it. Here's an interesting point, and I don't actually know the answer to this. Hopefully, you'll be able to tell me, Dan. My wife did dinner last night, which was mostly cold, but some hot. There was some hot sweet potato in there. I'm eating it for lunch today. She's put the whole thing in a Tupperware dish, and I waited for it to get completely cold last night before I stuck it in the fridge. I do that with chicken or something like that. Do the same rules still apply with plant-based? Or can you just, oh, never mind, it's still warm, bung it in the fridge? I don't know the answer. If you do know. And Jim Turner says, I'm plant-based too, but no plant any newer than around 2003. Well done, Jim. Well done indeed. Right, it is that time. I'm going to roll the outro in just a second before leaping gazelle-like over into my morning monologue. That was monologue, in case you couldn't understand what I just said. If you can't stick around, please stay safe. Look after yourself, your family, your friends, and your colleagues. Hope to see you again very soon. But if you do have the time and the inclination, I'll be back in just a moment with my entirely fictitious but fact-based monologue of the day. A solitary mascara-tinged teardrop trickles and burns its way down the widow's cheek. Her black veil does nothing to conceal the sadness, grief, and loss etched across her face. She's standing by the grave that will shortly receive the body of her husband. Her hands rest on the shoulders of a young boy. To the casual observer, it seems that she's comforting her son. In truth, she senses that her knees might buckle at any second, and she's using the boy for support. The mourners bow their heads as the coffin begins its slow descent into the earth. Sat atop it is a yellow hard hat, a reminder of the career that defined the dead man and the industry that ultimately claimed his life. The widow knows that this funeral is just a stop along the path. An investigation into her husband's accidental death is already underway. While she knows it will be a long, protracted process, there will be an ending. There will be an explanation, accountability, and hopefully justice and closure. That closure will be a long time coming, but there is at least the promise of an answer. In another cemetery, in another town, a solitary mascara-tinged teardrop trickles and burns its way down another widow's cheek. Her black veil does nothing to conceal the sadness, grief, and loss etched across her face. She stands by the grave that will shortly receive the body of her husband. Her hands rest on the shoulders of a young girl. To the casual observer, it seems that she's comforting her daughter. In truth, she senses her knees might buckle at any second, and she's using the girl for support. The mourners bow their heads as the coffin begins its slow descent into the earth. Sat atop it is a yellow hard hat, a reminder of the career that defined the dead man and the industry that ultimately claimed his life. Here, however, the paths of the two widows diverge. While one has the distant promise of closure and justice, the other has no such hope. Her husband wasn't killed in an accident. Her husband took his own life at work, most likely because of work. For her, there will be no investigation, no compensation, no justice, and no closure. Instead, there will be a suffocating and endless guilt. Should she have seen the signs? Could she have done something, anything, to prevent her husband's death? As she looks at the sad, tired faces of the mourners, she senses something behind their eyes. Their expressions aren't accusing, but they are questioning. What was so wrong with their marriage that this was his only way out, his only hope of release? Where the first widow's tragedy prompts an outpouring of support, the second widow finds only silence. The nature of her husband's passing has seen the family's finances plunged into probate, uncertainty compounding the grief and loss. Even the funeral costs have been covered by friends, family, and a hastily arranged bank loan. She grimaces as practical panic steals into her brain amidst the grief. This is her new reality. Her old life is over. Her husband's tragic actions have robbed her of her soulmate, robbed her daughter of her father, and shattered the family's stability. Inadvertently, his actions have also left her completely isolated. While the first widow can lean upon the understanding of family members, her husband's former employer, the police and safety inspectors, the second widow has been cast adrift. No one is fighting her corner. No one is seeking an explanation. Her husband's employer views his death as an inconvenience not of their making. The police say no crime has been committed, and the safety police are unwilling to pursue an investigation without the promise of a fee for intervention and a fine to cover their costs. So she's alone with her daughter, her grief, a nagging sense of guilt, and a terrifying, uncertain future. As she ponders all this, her husband's coffin continues its slow descent into the ground, his yellow hard hat shifting slightly atop the polished wood of the coffin. And another mascara-tinged teardrop trickles and burns its way down her cheek. There you are. That's Two Widows. Thank you very much indeed for Matthew Besser for inspiring that. I wrote it And in actual fact, I was going to tell you, because I didn't get back until late last night, I wasn't actually going to do a morning monologue this morning. I was going to park that and just send it out as an article on Demolition Insider and leave it at that. But then when I saw the announcement from the HSE, or more specifically, the lack of announcement from the HSE, here's how a bunch of people died, but no mention whatsoever of the suicide rate that is rife within the industry. I thought, no, sod it. It's going to have to be dredged up, and I'm going to do it. I wish I was better at dramatic reading, but that's where we are. So, yeah. Accidents, just to be clear, accidents claim about roughly a person per fortnight in the UK demolition and construction industry. Suicide claims 2 a day. I don't even know what more you can say on that subject, to be perfectly honest. And yes, every time I mention the subject of suicide, I know there are concerns and questions over whether somebody that is working in construction who takes their own life is a construction-related death. I understand that. But for that reason alone, surely there should be some kind of investigation. You know, what drove a person, a perfectly rational, a perfectly hard-working person to take their life? And in many instances, it's not taking themselves off into a dark room, or taking themselves off to a forest or a wood, taking themselves away. They actually commit suicide at work. Surely that is an indicator of something, isn't it? Having seen suicide up close when my old business partner killed himself, he'd been planning that for about 3 weeks. And he chose the time and the place. He took himself off, checked himself into a hotel, actually, and that was where he did the deed. But people are actually killing themselves on demolition and construction sites. Why there? Is it an unspoken way of saying this is part of my problem? Or, again, worthy of investigation, did something happen that proved to be the trigger of that suicide? You know, that maybe they were struggling. Maybe they were struggling relationship-wise, finance-wise, just general mental health-wise. But something happened during their time on site that was the ultimate trigger that said that's it. That has proved to be the final straw. I am now going to take the ultimate sacrifice. And listen, I'm not a mental health expert. All I would say is the people that I know that have committed suicide, I can only put it down to some kind of temporary mental illness. My old business partner, devoted family man, father of 6, happily married, and decided that they were better off without him. He knew better than that. They knew better than that. We all knew better than that. But he did the deed anyway. But what triggers somebody to do that at work? And we will never know the answer to that question until we actually start to investigate it. Not investigating suicides, but investigating site deaths. If somebody dies on a demolition or construction site here in the UK, their death should be investigated. We do the same. If it was an accident, what were the causes? Was somebody negligent? Were they paying attention? Were they properly trained? Were they under the duty of care of somebody else? We would investigate all of those things. And yet all of those things are set aside at the moment it becomes self-inflicted. What have we got in the chat here? Jim Turner says, but one is easy to quantify, construction related, and the other is open to many factors. But surely, let's look at those factors. And I mean, we were talking earlier, and I'm not arguing with you, Jim. I mean, I think you're right to raise the question. But think about this: somebody dies of mesothelioma, or asbestos-related illness, or exposure to some chemical or toxin. You will still check. Now, they may have died on a site today, but they may have picked up that asbestos-related disease, that toxin last week, last month, 20 years ago. But we will take the time and we will analyse that to find out exactly what caused their death. That's part of the HSE's remit, is to investigate site deaths. And yet, when it comes to self-inflicted, we choose, and that's the point, we choose not to bother. And I know Jim's made another comment, which I'll get to in a second, but I wrote that in a very pointed way. If there was some way for the health and safety executive to claim their fee for intervention, or to levy a financial penalty in the aftermath of a suicide, you can bet your bottom dollar they'd be investigating it with everything they had. But there isn't, and so they don't. It's the unspoken side of suicide. There's no money in it. There's money in accidents. There's money in fatalities. There's no money in suicide. And ultimately, when you think about people that do die in the workplace, part of the reason for the investigation is to learn lessons from it. We are choosing not to learn potential lessons from self-inflicted deaths. You know, what if we were to investigate a demolition or construction suicide and uncover the fact that, you know, the guy was being bullied at work, he was living hand to mouth, cash flow was an issue, he'd been forced into self-employment and he couldn't make ends meet, and so on down the line. If we investigated that, you know, maybe, you know, one case wouldn't do it, but if you investigate maybe 500 plus a year, and there is an underlying cause, be it financial or pressure, or, you know, working away from home for prolonged periods, away from your support network. If we could identify that, then surely that is an opportunity for the industry to say, well, you know, we've done our best to mend our ways. We're working at height and, you know, reversing vehicles into people. It's now time to mend our ways on the pressure that we heap upon our workforce. It's time to stop people working from home, away from home unnecessarily. It's time to do something about cash flow and late payment that forces people into these desperate situations. But all the time it's not being investigated, regardless of whether it was directly construction and demolition related or something completely outside of that. All the time it goes uninvestigated. We as an industry will never ever learn. And we will continue to heap pressure on our workers, to make them jump through a ringer to get paid, to force them to work away from home, and so on down the line. Jim says this. I think if folk are so depressed with work, they are more likely not to go to work. So I lean towards their home private life being the problem. It may well be. It may well be. But we don't know. And I guess that's my point. As it stands today, if somebody is killed on site, despite the fact that it might take 5 years, or in the case of Didcot, 10 plus years, at some point, the health and safety executive will come back with a piece of paper and says, that bloke that died, here's how, here's why, here is who and what is to blame. Here is the cause of that man's death. With suicide, just put it down to bad luck. And I mentioned at the top of the show, when I was talking about the health and safety executive releasing their annual fatality figures, you know, to tuck 2,100 mesothelioma deaths down the very bottom of the pecking order on their statement is kind of pushing a very, very important subject down and down, to the point where if you really glanced at the HSE statement, you may not have even spotted it at all. and yet 2,100 people have died. There are roughly 500, maybe 600 that are dying from suicide within our industry. That's enough. That's enough to be not just an anomaly. That's enough for you to go, hang on a bloody minute. 500 or 600 suicides in a single industry. We've got a suicide rate roughly 4 times the national average. That's weird. Do you remember I did that joke thing a while back, maybe a year ago? How many owls would you need to see in a single day before you thought, something's up? If you saw an owl, which I do from time to time, you go, oh, look, how fantastic is an owl. If you saw 2 owls, you'd go, well, I never did. 2 owls. If you saw 3 or 4, the fuck is going, where are all these owls coming from? You would think there's something up here. When 500 to 600 people take their lives within a single industry sector every single year, surely at this point somebody should be going, what? In one industry sector has a suicide rate of roughly 4 times the national average. And this is not peculiar to construction either. If you've watched the latest series of Clarkson's Farm, farming's exactly the same. Once again, it is working men, predominantly men, that are doing this. What is the underlying cause? It might be, as Jim has rightly suggested there, it might be, and maybe it's an indirect thing. Maybe that working away from home, working all the hours that God sends, maybe that places strains on marriages and relationships, and maybe that strain on relationships and marriages then has a domino effect that impacts upon mental health. So maybe the trigger is home, but the cause, the underlying cause, may be construction. Maybe not. Maybe there's a history of mental health problems with a person. Maybe there's drink or alcohol or drug addiction. Maybe all of those things. Maybe they are just a depressive type of person. But until we ask the question, we will never know. And at what point do you say enough? You know, if we're not asking the question of what is causing this spate of suicides in an industry when there's 600 a year, at what point do you say, well, 600, we won't bother investigating that? Is 700 enough? Is 1,000? 2,000? At what point do we as an industry say, I really think we need to look at this? Dan says this. Yes, some situations are related to home, like stress and not being focused at work. Sometimes, not all times, 2 types of stresses can push that person over the edge. Yeah. And again, I don't believe, unless you are cursed with some very severe mental health issues, I don't think anybody experiences a single thing and says, that's it, I'm done, and kills himself. I don't believe that for a minute. I do believe there will be a build-up and a lack of help and a general lack of awareness from friends and family and work colleagues. And I think the thing will build up and build up and build up until one day there will be that straw that breaks the camel's back and the person will take themselves away and take their own lives. But surely in an industry that prides itself on its duty of care to its employers, surely the onus is upon this industry to say, okay, what is the cause? And I'm not talking about mental health first aiders. I'm not talking about mental health awareness courses. I'm talking about looking at the fundamental way in which this industry operates, to analyze and to discover if there is anything that we are doing within our working practices that are causing people to kill themselves. You know, we look at cause and effect. We know that if you use power tools for a long period of time, your fingers will go numb, they'll go white, hand-arm vibration. We've chased the cause, we understand the effect, and we've now placed limits on it. We've done exactly the same with asbestos. I realise people are still dying, but those have likely contracted their mesothelioma 20 or 30 years before. But now that we know the harm that is caused by asbestos, we limit exposure. You know, we're very careful about how we handle it and how we mitigate it and everything else. So we've identified cause, we've seen the effect, we've taken action. We know exactly the same with falls from height, with reversing cameras on excavators so that people don't get crushed behind an excavator. We know what the cause and effect every single time. But suicide is treated as a completely different animal. There is no cause and effect. Somebody dies in an accident, get the HSE out, read all reports, investigation. Someone dies by suicide, call an ambulance, call the old bill, notify them, get on with your lives. And going back to the monologue, which, as I say, is fictional, how does a widow get on with their lives? I mean, the guilt, even if the widow had nothing whatsoever to do with it, even if there was nothing that she'd done that had contributed to that, I'm sure there will be that feeling. And then over and above that, the way that this system works, life insurance in all likelihood won't pay out. Any will that the dead person has left behind will be passed into probate. There'll be investigations into that. And there's another thing: we investigate from that point of view. Did he make provisions before he killed himself? In which case that may have been illegal, and so on down the line. We do all those investigations into the finances, but we do no investigation whatsoever into what caused somebody to kill themselves in their place of work or related to their place of work. That's my thought for the day. As I say, Matthew Besser, thank you very much indeed for inspiring that. I'm going to be back tomorrow, I promise. I don't know what we're talking about. I never know what we're going to be talking about, to be perfectly honest. But we always seem to manage, don't we? I've never missed a morning monologue since I started doing them. It's come close a few times, I have to say. This morning being one of them, but thankfully I had something in the barrel. I'll be back tomorrow, 10 a.m. for yet more of the same people. Still haven't heard back from Komatsu on a bit more footage that I need for the Komatsu film that I was planning to do last Wednesday. But as soon as I know when that's going to happen, I will let you know, and we'll crack on with that as well. Go and have a good day. If you're in the Shetlands, avoid the midges. Everywhere else, avoid the sun. Keep hydrated. See you tomorrow.